Welcome back to another episode of the Media Pass. I'm your host, Alex, joined as always by your other host, Matt. Matt, how are you doing after this riveting Western Conference Finals came to a conclusion last night?
So I have a surprise for you. One second, I'm just pulling up you guys are going to hear some weird sound for a second. I'm going to pull up last episode. Okay, got that. I had to pull up last episode because I want to be the question reader today. But my surprise for you. So last episode, we referenced Semi-Pro, one of Alex's all-time favorite movies. The other day, I decided to just rewatch it, just in your honor. So that's my surprise. So maybe, since it's top of mind, I might have like a reference or something.
Nice.
You know, maybe I'll call you my son friend. But yeah, so I did that. I did that for you, man. Just to let you know how much I care about you.
See, this is why this podcast is what it is. But let's get into some questions.
Okay. Question time. This one's a funny one. It's not really a question. It's just like somebody comment. It's like they commented their inner monologue in the comment section. Volt Dumar. He goes, "Hey guys, I keep trying to think of how Ant can get going in the series, but with Derek Jones in front of him and Derek Lively waiting for him right behind him, I'm not sure what he can do. I guess we'll see." It reminds me of you played Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when you talk to the random people after you beat them, the random trainers, and they'll just make these random sentences about whatever it is. It's like, man, I wish my Bulbasaur was so stronger. I guess I'll train him over here tomorrow. And it's like, cool, man. Thanks.
That was a great way to describe that.
See.
So wait, I'm still a little unclear what was the question?
There was no. That's why I read it.
Okay.
It was just funny.
Okay.
Ian Kernut 3350, frequent friend of the show. Thank you so much for that. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for answering my last question. What kind of content would you guys create, YouTube or journalism, if you weren't covering basketball? Alex.
That's a very interesting question.
So can I go first here? Yeah, I actually do. First. So I have this vision. So one thing I do, I don't know, Alex, do you, when you're working, do you ever put on background noise?
I used to. I don't as much anymore because I get distracted really easily.
Okay. So for me, my big background noise show is Entourage.
Do you watch shows while you... Dude.
I've seen Entourage.
How do you do that?
I've seen Entourage. I don't do it when I watch film. Only when I'm writing or looking through data or something. But no, when I'm watching film, I listen to the volume of the commentators because I actually like listening to broadcast. But yeah. So I rewatch Entourage, but I've seen it 9 times start to finish. So it's not I'm you know what I mean. It's kind of listening to music at this point for me. It's just their sounds they soothe me. I guess they soothe me. So anyways, back to the content we create. If I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be working on a really shitty sitcom about just a couple of dudes in their late 20s. Not Entourage wouldn't be the whole movie star element, but there would just be about dudes doing random things. The other day I was thinking of a scene. Okay. I was thinking of a scene. You go to church, don't you? Churchgoer?
Yeah.
Okay. Not to get too, personal, but what are you, Christian, I presume?
Yeah, non-denominational Christian.
Okay, cool. Do you take the bread? Are you familiar with the bread taking?
Communion?
Yeah. That's. I was a Christian, so I should probably know that. But so anyways, I was me and my buddy, I went to church with him. I went to church with him last Sunday. He's Greek Orthodox, right? And so I made I was saying, it'd be a great scene for a sitcom is because I'm really into macros, count my macros in the summertime and all this stuff, cutting, bulking, all that. Right. I was it'd be a really funny scene. It's I go up to the priest as he's trying to give me the Holy Communion and I just deny him. I'm hey, I'm cutting right now. I can't have that. I just thought it'd be a nice little funny scene in the sitcom that I'm working on. But that's what I would do. To answer your question, that's what I would do. Is I'd work on a really shitty sitcom, probably be homeless, but yeah.
That's wow. My answer is so lame compared to that. That was a really good answer.
I'm sorry, man. I'm unloading the clip today.
Yeah, clearly. My answer is probably far less interesting. If I wasn't doing YouTube, I guess the question is like, if we were covering something that wasn't basketball, what would it be? Mm-hmm. Not what would we be doing if we weren't covering basketball?
Yeah. It's like we still do like the same, like kind of, we'll call it like eclectic line of work, but it's just a different subject matter.
This is a problem because I'm not really super. I mean, I'd probably just like make videos about how much the Minnesota Vikings frustrate me. I would probably cover the Vikings because that's the only other, like, I guess, thing that I'm passionate about. I mean, there's other stuff that I'm passionate about, like, or that hobbies that I have, but like none of them are things that I would necessarily, maybe running. Doing like a running YouTube channel would be fun. But the thing is, I'm like very much a novice runner. Like I'm not even close enough to where someone would be like, oh, let me go watch Alex talk about his, 9.5 minute mile that he ran. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think my overarching answer here is I'm not sure I would be like doing this eclectic line of work if it wasn't for basketball, I think is my answer.
Nice. I like that. Yeah. You could do like, I used to watch, when I was on my shoe kick, I'd watch like these running channels where they review running shoes. You could do like that, like show them like what your pair of Asics that you ran in today.
How'd you know I run an Asics?
Do you really?
Yeah, Gel Nimbus 25s, the most comfortable shoe I have ever worn in my life, and I'm not sure I'll ever buy another shoe ever again.
Do you wear this for leisure too?
So I originally bought them just for like to wear around, and then my dad, I went home for a race, and my dad was like, check out my new running shoes that I got, and they were the same shoes that I had, these Gel Nimbuses. And I was like, you running these? He's like, yeah, they're incredible running shoes. So I was like, I'm going to try running in them. I ran in them, and they're like the most comfortable running shoe I've ever worn. I did my half marathon in them. They're incredible. I will literally only buy that shoe forever.
I like that. I like that a lot. This is the only podcast where you get that kind of stuff. Just saying, I don't hear them talk about that on the low post.
We're 8 minutes in. We're just like...
You don't hear about this kind of stuff on the low post or the dunker spot. Just saying. Here we go. Beyond the Arc YT, frequent commenter. We love you and appreciate you. Here after game 2 of the Mavs versus Wolves, man, lots changed since then. And my question is, do you believe the next evolution of Anthony Edwards' game is his passing? Because I believe that's the next evolution of his game. Alex?
Yes, but the problem is, I think we kind of throw around like the idea of like a passing leap a lot for a lot of players. This doesn't just apply to Anthony Edwards, but like we'll be like, oh, this guy needs to have a playmaking leap. This guy needs to get better at handling doubles. For some players that happens. For some players that never happens. And I would even say for some players it's unrealistic to like just assume that that is a given that it will happen. And so with Anthony Edwards, I'm kind of just like, it would be amazing if he does go through the offseason, lock himself in the gym, dealing with like double teams and different types of pick and roll coverages, and he develops his game and adapts to it. But also like some of his problems are, not just related to passing. It's more of an issue of other aspects of his game make it difficult for him to create like strong passing angles and open up like, advantageous passing windows. It's like you look at his screen utilization. Anthony Edwards has pretty terrible screen utilization. And so like he'll come off of a screen, or he'll have a screen sitting there waiting for him. And like, if you watch Anthony Edwards throughout this entire playoffs, that dude loves to reject screens, like constantly rejecting screens when he should be using them, especially to try and, mitigate some of these aggressive coverages that the Mavericks were throwing at him. But you also look when he would be using the screens, they were throwing these like really hard hedges and traps at him. And he was always doing the one pass away above the break, whoever was just, closest to him. He was never looking over the top to see like, oh, okay, do I have Gobert on the short roll? Do I have Cat on the short roll? Do I have Kyle Anderson on the short roll? And that's stuff that you can learn. That's stuff you can develop. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think continuing to develop the other areas of his game, it's the expression that we always hear, like the game is slowing down for him. I think Anthony Edwards is still at the point where like the game has not slowed down for Anthony Edwards yet. He still has to play like pretty frantic and pretty improvisational. And I think these reps were good for him. I think he will continue to develop as a passer. How significant that evolution is going to be, we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the cool thing about what happened with Edwards is he did have like flashes of making like high level reads, high level decision making, whatever. And so like young players naturally inconsistent. So the idea is as long as they show the flashes, one day they'll eventually develop into consistently what those flashes are. And when he flashed was pretty tantalizing. But back to what like Alex is saying, I think it's like the key word is like craft. He doesn't really have guile yet. Like if you watch his postseason, I don't think he ever Nash dribbles once. He hardly ever like plays off of 2 feet. He picks up his dribble prematurely. Again, the
struggles not knowing to split defenders.
Yeah, struggles splitting defenders. Doesn't snake ball screens really well.
Doesn't deal with nail help.
Exactly. So like that's like all stuff that is going to need to be added to his bag before he can start to make those high level decisions. Like I was talking 2 days ago, I was at the bar with some of my buddies, and I was like, we were talking about pick and roll coverages, which is honestly pretty fun. That they brought that up to me after we were drinking, but like it's like the reason blitzes.
I wish my friends would talk about pick and roll coverages with me.
This is a really cool group of men I ran into there, but I was like, the reason blitzes don't really work against Doncic is because he never like discontinues his dribble, so the big always has to kind of stay there because that's how the coverage works when you hard hedge is. You hedge until you get the ball handler pick up their dribble, then you get to recover back. But if he never actually picks up his dribble and takes the pass before he does that, then the big is like trailing. He's a step behind. So it's like those little things. I think it's like a combination of craft and decision-making consistency that'll really be the make or break skill for Ant, whether or not he actually gets to be the face of the league that some people have kind of ordained him as. But next question here. Let's see. Okay. Howdy, fellas. Do you guys have a favorite moment so far of the playoffs that isn't a poster dunk by Ant? You
go first. I think your answer is going to be more interesting than mine.
Really? Because I always have something weird. I don't know. Honestly, this is like pretty normie, man. But I think that Doncic game winner, game 2, man, that was pretty crazy. Crazy shot. The way he was yelling at Gobert, just like the fire. And then I loved like Kyrie Irving afterwards saying one more stop. Like he's just saying one more stop. Like he's so like dialed in, like he knows what's going on. Like, hey guys, let's not forget we still have some business to do here.
That's a good one. I would say, I think it was game 2 against the Nuggets, the Timberwolves against the Nuggets. And it was that like insane first half that they played. And like, I remember texting my dad the whole time, and like everyone was on Twitter and everyone was like, this is the best half of basketball I've ever seen a team play. Like the Timberwolves, I think played about as close as you can probably get to like a perfect half of basketball. It is some of the like best basketball I've ever seen a team play individually, from like defense to offense. Like just everything was firing on all cylinders. It was like if you took a perfect snapshot of, okay, what does this Timberwolves team look like at their absolute best? It was that half of basketball. It was like, oh my gosh, this team is absolutely insane when they're just like, everything's working, when they're working how they're designed to work. And it was just fun to watch that. And like, it was one of those moments when you're watching basketball where you're just like, man, this is why I love basketball. Like these moments like this where you just watch something and you know you're watching something special, and like you get chills talking about it weeks later. I don't know, man. That's definitely my favorite moment. And anytime my dad and I like commiserating about Minnesota sports, anytime we get to, like rally in that, it's always fun.
Yeah, we covered that in one of the lost episodes of the Media Past.
That's true. Man.
Remember I didn't sleep that night. I had slept like 15 minutes or something that night, and I was like sitting there and I was like speaking, but it wasn't ever coherent. I don't know. Long story. Anyways, I just saw someone call Drew Holiday the best two-way guard in the league, and it had me wondering. Oh, by the way, sorry. This is the last question was asked by Steve Ramen 7743, frequent commenter of the show. This question was asked by Side Activist, who is also a frequent commenter. But he says most two-way players are better offensively than they are defensively, or at least put more energy on the offensive end. Are there any that act the other way around? Two-way. So he's talking about, I'm assuming, two-way, like better than role player, almost all-star caliber players, right?
The way I interpreted it, because I read this one back when we posted the episode and we like originally got the comment. Mm-hmm. The way I interpret it was, I think they were saying like the best two-way players are usually their offense is better than their defense, but their defense is good enough to where it's like, oh, you're getting the benefits of both, clearly. But are there any guys who are like top two-way players, but their defense is better than their offense?
Well, so like what naturally happens, this is like a very, very, very common like developmental, like going back to like Michael Jordan, is you come into the league and, you're super athletic, like elite defender, and then you get better on offense, more on-ball responsibility, and then your defense dwindles a little bit, but it's okay because your offense is excellent now. It's elite, right? So that's pretty common. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, you name the player, right? It's happened to all of them. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. But so I feel like the answer would probably be a big man. Like, so I think he's asking who's a guy who exerts more on defense and offense. I'd say like a Jaren Jackson. He's like a pretty nice two-way player who uses a lot on defense. Draymond, Gobert.
Yeah.
Right? You think I'm on the right?
Oh, definitely.
Question?
I mean, I think you could also get into like the 3-and-D guys, because like I think Alex Caruso is a guy whose defense is clearly better than his offense, but his offense is, I think, actually gotten better like over the course of the past like 2 years or so. It's like Alex Caruso offensively, I think, is a significantly better player than he was 2, 3, 4 years ago. Jalen Suggs is a good one, I think, because he used to be like pretty much a zero offensively, and now he's like, Jalen Suggs is like good offensive player. I like Jalen Suggs shooting the ball. It's like, I'm good with that. He can have the ball in his hands. He can run the pick and roll. Cool. But his defense is overwhelmingly better than his offense. So I think he's probably a good nod for this one.
That is good. I like that. Here, let's keep going. We had too
Bam
much fun.
Adebayo, probably?
Ooh, Bam's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I think
like
that,
all that.
We've covered that. That's good.
Nice.
Good question.
Okay,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, great question. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just trying to look ahead.
Oh, I have a question from Twitter bookmarked as well.
Oh, nice.
It might be more of a segment, so we'll get into it later.
Oh, are you talking about the one we texted about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like that. At Robbie, I can't read your name, man, but you know who you are. At Robbie, we love you.
You know who you are.
Hey guys, I was wondering on the portability ranking, where would you put Jayson Tatum? Because I was talking about it with a friend, and I was thinking, and I always think So I was thinking, when you factor in both sides of the ball, he might be the most portable player in the league. So actually, I was talking about it today. I was writing about it today because I wrote an article for the analysts that should be coming out any minute now about whether or not Luka Doncic is the best player in the NBA. You could read the article. We're going to rank the top 25 players one of these days. But I made a comment that ideally, like, it isn't all the way true, but like ideally, like the best player in the league is the superstar who gives you the most flexibility from a team building perspective. And so, like you have to think about, the way I think about it is like there's like you have to think about it like economically, right? Where it's like each like skill, it has like a level of like value. Like, you know, first of all, like I think the most valuable thing you can find in basketball and the hardest thing to find is like great on ball creation, right? And then maybe it's like rim protection, and then it's shooting, and then it's like, you know, physicality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so like Jayson Tatum gives you like. He gives you like he's a very flexible player, very versatile player, can do a lot of that stuff. But the thing about him is he doesn't give you elite on-ball creation. I think we've kind of figured that out at this point, right? Would you agree with that? It's like very good. It's like very good.
Yeah, it's not where if you look at the top guys in the league. And not saying Jayson Tatum isn't a top guy in the league. I think Jayson Tatum is, yes, one of the best players in the league. Numbers wise, I don't know where I'd put him, but yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
So I don't know if that gets the portability. So he's like a very portable player, I guess. Like, but in terms of portability, I mean, it's a little bit of a different discussion. But like, so it's like, yes, he's extremely portable in that, like, he does, like, you know, he's a great defender, good on-ball defender, good off-ball defender, rim protection, size, shooting, passing, spacing, all these things, right? So, like, he fits in a lot of teams. I guess the only thing is, like, if you're wanting to build a championship team, you need to make sure that you surround him with enough on-ball creation. But then again, that's also the hardest thing to find, you know? So he gives you, like, all the other great stuff, but just not the hardest thing to find. So I don't know if I would say he's the most portable, but he's up there.
Yeah. I was kind of, not that this is like necessarily a one-to-one gauge of like portability, but if you look at like his assisted percentage, like how much he was assisted on his shots across the board, he's 94th percentile or higher, meaning that like he's rarely being assisted on his shots, which that's not necessarily like, oh, he's not being assisted on his shots, so he's not portable. But like the point is, more often than not, from three, from mid-range, at the rim, like his assisted percentage at the rim is 61%, or no, 39% rather. 29% in the mid-range, 48% from three. Like Jayson Tatum is still very much an on-ball creator. Like if we're talking about scalability, I think we look at a guy like Paul George, where the whole thing with Paul George is like Paul George is an elite second side creator. Like you can, you know, reverse the ball, and if you have an advantage already created, Paul George is going to just dominate. Developing that advantage and capitalizing on that advantage. But with like Jayson Tatum, it's more often than not, you're going to see Jayson Tatum, he'll get a pass, he's going to stop the ball. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying Jayson Tatum is like a black hole on offense, or that he's like this, you know, extremely damaging ball stopper. It's just more that's his role. I'm not necessarily saying he couldn't be, you know, early in his career, he did a ton of stuff off ball. Like he was an off, but he was a high level play finisher. And then he's developed more into this on ball guy. So if the question is like, is he the most scalable, you know, top player in the league? I don't know, because we haven't really seen him in that context for a long time, especially in that context since he's developed into the player he is now. He may be a much better kind of off-ball type of player now compared to what he was earlier in his career. It's tough to say.
Yeah. All right. Last question before we get into the quick little segment. Damn, I lost it because I was looking at you. Do you guys think Mathurin would marginally change this series, and to what extent? The person asking this question, who is Isaac Jacobson 9341. I believe this is their first time asking a question. Really appreciate that. Hope you continue to do so. But I assume he's talking about the Pacers Celtics series that is now deaded. Okay, so I have a thing to say about Ben Mathurin.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we probably both have pretty strong opinions about him.
Yeah, I have a thing. Let's just say he's got a lot of Julius Randle in him. It'd be like, to be honest, like, I think he's like, I scouted him last year. So this is what hurts me, because I wrote about Nembhard earlier this week. You made a video about Nembhard earlier this week. True. We did not coagulate on that. We both just, like, we have the group think, man. We think about basketball the exact same way. The same thing pops to us. But I scouted 10. So I do March's Reading About Rookies month, right? And last season, so not the 2023-24 season before that, I did 10 rookies, and one of them was Ben Math. Okay. And one of them was not Nembhard, and I regret it so much now, because I'm like looking back, and honestly, the more I spend time with Ben Mathurin's game this season, the more I reflect on my time with him last season. I just see he reminds me a lot of Julius Randle, Tyler Hero, where it's like, I think he's a really, really good floor raiser that'll probably end up getting himself a lot of money. And then those type of guys are usually the guys you have to shed when you want to take it to the next level. Like, they can get you can have a nice little 47-50 win team, but if you want to be a high 50s, low 60 team, you usually got to shed these kind of scorers. He's not like a great read and react player. I think he's I hate using this word, but kind of a little bit of a ball stopper. And then the type of scoring he provides isn't uber efficient. I know he's still young. I don't mean to like make this some sort of indictment. It's just what I've kind of seen. So to answer your question, no, I don't really think he would have helped in this series. Maybe. Sorry, Alex. I think maybe he would have helped a little bit with Jaylen Brown, just matching his physicality on defense. But other than that, I can't really see a pathway where he would have really moved the needle.
I think it's probably fair to say that, I mean, this doesn't even feel remotely like a hot take, but I'd rather have, if I have to choose like the other guy to handle the ball when Tyrese Halliburton isn't on the floor, I think it's fair to say I'd rather have Andrew Nembhard than Benedict Mathurin. I don't think, and I'm not trying to like go super hard on this guy, because I think a lot of people probably do, and you know, a lot of people have strong feelings about him. And I'm not saying that like the criticisms of his game that people have are even remotely invalid. My whole thing is like, he just doesn't he's not good enough to be like, you know, facilitating your offense. You can't run offense through him, but he's also not good enough off ball to just be like, okay, you know, we're going to have you spot up and like finish plays, attack, closeout stuff. Like, he can do that stuff, but more often than not, like you said, he's kind of a bit of a ball stopper. And another thing I haven't really seen talked about is one of the biggest things with him during his rookie season was the free throw rate. He was elite at getting to the line as a rookie. This is actually crazy. I didn't look up the numbers for this until literally just now. His free throw rate, his rookie year, was 48%. Guess what his free throw rate was this year?
Like maybe low 30s, high 20s.
34%.
You know what's crazy, Alex, about that? Is he got injured before the change in refereeing. I was
literally just gonna mention that.
That's that groupthink, man. It's the Andrew Nembhard brain.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm interested to see, now that the Pacers have a more clearly painted picture of what they're working with. They have good data now. I am interested to see how they try to mold Mathurin's role to be a more cohesive fit on the team. I think that's probably what I'll say.
I just want to say one more thing. It's like you always hear like people say you can't win with like these ball stoppers. The reason you usually can't win with them is just because they make too much money. Like if they were like cost controlled, because what happens is they'll usually like be on a bad team, bring them to like a good level, get paid, and then the team kind of actually like wants to become great. Whereas like right now, like the Pacers are in a good spot where they could kind of mold Mathurin, kind of contain his role so he never becomes like uber expensive. And like he could be like a super valuable weapon off the bench as like a physically imposing scorer. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Alex, do you want to transition to that? Do you want to do the segment first? Do we want to start talking about what just happened? Do we want to talk about the finals?
Segment. I would like to do the segment because I think it's pertinent, and I think it will kind of lead us into the next discussion. So I tweeted, if you watched Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals, they do their little kind of interstitial sideline interviews where they talk to players or coaches, and Andrew Nembhard got interviewed, and something he said was, coach was just telling us like, we got to be sure to be like playing random, and that like awoke something in my brain, and it brought me back to, I believe, the 2019 or 2020 Milwaukee Bucks team where Mike Budenholzer has that infamous, I think it was a locker room speech or whatever, where he was like, play fast, play random. And everybody clowned Mike Budenholzer. But Andrew Nembhard saying how coach was like telling them to play random, that's not the first time that I've heard a player or a coach mention that outside of Mike Budenholzer. Like I've watched, we watch a ton of League Pass. So with that, we see a lot of like coach interviews, player interviews. You get the post-game press conferences that'll run after the game plays, and you get to hear like the post-game interviews. And a lot of players mention how like it's important to play random. But Mike Budenholzer, kind of got clowned for that statement back in the playoffs with the Bucks, because everyone was like, he doesn't have a game plan. Like the segment, we're going to get into the specifics of it, but the point of all of this is, I think teams emphasize playing random more than people realize. Like, it is not good to be doing the same thing over and over again, because defenses adapt. They start to, understand what you're doing. They start to be able to game plan for what you're doing. So keeping a defense on their toes is important, which is why you hear players and coaches say, like, play random, because it keeps a defense from being able to adapt as quickly, and it makes their life more difficult. But the segment was, I tweeted, it's funny how everybody clowned Mike Budenholzer for go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to cut you off because I think I had a valuable. And I'm going to put you on the spot right here, make Mike Prada very angry at you. Have you had the chance yet to read Mike Prada's book, Spaced Out?
I have not.
Okay, so there's a chapter in the book. It's titled "The Best Play is Random," right? And there's like an anecdote in there where he dug up some old interview with Jeff Van Gundy, where Jeff Van Gundy was the coach of the Houston Rockets in 2006, 2007, I believe. And Van Gundy tracked like all of his plays, like, to see which one was the most efficient. And I might be butchering the story, but basically the play that was the most efficient was the random play, the play that they didn't draw up anything for. So just random. So yeah, it's always been a thing. Coaches have always known this, man.
Yeah. And what I tweeted was, Mike Budenholzer got clowned for the whole play fast, play random thing, but I've heard multiple other players and coaches talk in interviews about the importance of playing random. And Grace at Aaron Burr 27, frequent supporter of the Media Pass, frequent supporter of just basketball media in general. She also has a podcast with Will Jones called What's in a Game. Good podcast. Go check it out. But she replied and she said, I think it helps when you have players skilled / smart enough to do it. Not that Bud didn't, but some rosters need a little more help, quote unquote. And I said I could call out a lot of teams right now, but I'm going to bite my tongue. And that got me thinking. Which teams in the league right now are stuck in flux between playing too random and having too much help? What is I think this is more of a discussion for like the bad teams. We can actually talk a little bit about the Timberwolves with this. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, that's just like what we were talking about with Benedict. That's the whole idea of being a ball stopper, is like you can't play fast. You don't know how to make quick decisions. You have to get into your old school triple threat move, Pete Newell drill, whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's basically like, I mean, we could that's like why they are so like overly reliant on Mike Conley's, because he knows how to keep things moving, how to just play, like he understands the feel of the game and all that stuff. And it hurts them because they lose out on their team identity, which is we're tall, we're long, we're athletic, we're tenacious. Like, Conley, as much of a like a wily defender he is, like he does hurt them a lot on defense because of his diminutive stature relative to the rest of his peers. He's taller than me. I think you got him by a half inch, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah. But, how tall is he? Like 6? I think he's like a short 6'2".
Okay. Well, so what do you claim? 6'2.5"?
I have been. This is not me. I have not measured myself. I do not know. I have been told I'm 6'3".
Okay.
I don't know.
It's pretty sick, man. It's pretty sick. Must be really cool. Must have done a lot for you.
Mike Conley's 6 foot, according to Basketball Reference. Take that with a grain of salt. He's probably under 6 foot.
Yeah, so you get the point. It's just like, but like, so I mean the whole premise of it is like, at least the way I envision like what we're talking about here, the teams that play two, like, okay, you know who plays too random? Here's a great example: Josh Green. Yeah, the guy's old. He's perpetually out of control. Did you see yesterday? It ended up being a foul. Gafford ended up getting to the free throw line, but he was in transition and he made like this behind the back bounce pass. Like he thought he was like actually Jason Kidd. Like he was the guy on the team who thought he was Jason Kidd, not Kyrie Irving, not Luka Doncic. It was him. And he like behind the back bounce passes it to Gafford, and like somehow Gafford like ends up with the ball and he gets fouled. And I'm just like, that was almost like the most freak shit I've ever seen in my life. Like if he would have scored there, like I don't know what would have happened to me. I wouldn't be here today. But so there's guys like that who are just like too out of control, too random. And then you got like a guy like, I mean, honestly, like as much as he's ascended, he's one of the best players in the NBA now. Anthony Edwards I think he still struggles to play randomly, considering he has these predetermined, we were just talking about the predetermined, I'm going to consistently reject the screen. I don't know how to mix in a screen reject with a snake dribble with, just a traditional ball screen, dribble navigation, whatever. All these things. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of rambling, but what do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm with you. There's like this whole thing, and some teams take it to more of an extreme where it's like their entire scheme. But 0.5 basketball, which is like when you get the ball, you have 0.5 seconds to dribble, pass, or shoot. And like, it's all about quick decision making, keeping the ball moving, keeping the defense on your toes. And I think like you go look at the Toronto Raptors, my understanding is that something they were trying to do is kind of more of a 0.5 basketball approach where everything is quick, super fast pace, super random, just quick decision making, capitalizing on advantages, quick hitters, stuff like that. And I like some of the stuff that appeared as a result of this. I think that's good for like data acquisition and kind of seeing the limits of what you can push your team to do without a ton of structure. But also I think like the Raptors are probably a team that needs a little more help. They need probably a little bit more structure than they have. And I think the truth of the matter is there's a balance. And I think you look at a team like the Denver Nuggets, where there's a really, really, really good balance of playing random and playing within a very, very confined structure. I think the best teams, like offensively, I think the Pacers are a good example of this.
Well, this was going to go with that. I think Halliburton and Siakam offer the perfect yin and yang of that, because it's like Halliburton, he plays with pace, he plays random, he's fast, he's 0.5 basketball, and Siakam he has the face-up game, he has the jab step, he has the rip through, he has all that stuff. Like, it works in perfect harmony. But yeah, continue.
And that's why I think Andrew Nembhard is so important, because Pascal Siakam can play that kind of random blend where, like, yeah, the Pacers have their set offense where they're going to do things, operate business as usual. A lot of like Spain pick and roll, stuff like that, wide screens. But Pascal Siakam is, you can just get him the ball in the post with a mismatch, and then all of a sudden the defense is like, whoa, what the heck? We've been planning for spamming stack actions, and all of a sudden Pascal Siakam's posting up. We don't really know what to do. And then you have Andrew Nembhard now in the equation where, like you said, Tyrese Halliburton's like perfect 0.5 basketball, capitalizes on the smallest thing that a defense is going to give him, super quick to make those decisions. But Andrew Nembhard, it's like, well, Andrew Nembhard might get the ball on the wing and dribble to the elbow for like a pull-up mid-range jumper. And it's like, you can't really game plan for that. It's glaringly apparent with like the Dallas Mavericks. It's like the Timberwolves are an amazing defense, but I think we kind of saw how like the randomness of Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic is like, you can't really game plan for that. It doesn't matter how good of defense you play. You can't game plan for that. They still have structure, like they're running a ton of double drag. That's really Dallas's bread and butter, is just double drag, because it usually gets them the matchups that they want. It usually gets them the ball screen coverages that they want, where like, yeah, you throw 2 at Luka, it's going to get the ball out of his hands. But it allows them to like play random. So I think
with structure,
really,
with structure though, that's the combination. You have the structure of the double drag, and then all of the pieces in it, they know how to read and react. Like, in game 5 yesterday, you saw them. They even added an extra wrinkle where Kyrie Irving would become the 4th guy in the pick and roll, and he would go roll and replace action to go along with the double drag. Like PJ Washington knows, okay, if Cat's going to blitz, I'm going to roll, but I'm going to roll a wide route to make it harder for somebody to recover to me. Like, you remember the play from the very beginning of the third quarter when they get the lob to PJ?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's because he took a wide route when he was rolling, makes it even harder for somebody to really recover on him. And then I think Kyrie on that play, I know the following play he definitely did, but I think on that play he also replaced. So he came out to the perimeter. So that's just another piece to worry about. But yeah, no, it's basically like finding that balance of like, you create a system. For the Nuggets, it's the DHO, it's the 2-man game. And then you put the guys in place that know how to read and react out of that. So you play systemic randomness.
I think, yes, exactly. Systemic randomness. I think that's systematic.
We coin that? Systematic.
Systematic.
Yeah, systematic.
Maybe systemic still works. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's, copyright, trademark. You owe us $5 anytime you say systematic randomness. Matt specifically, I'll take 25 cents off. But yeah, I think I kind of tweeted about this, and I think it's what I was kind of alluding to without realizing what I was alluding to with what I said about Anthony Edwards, about how Anthony Edwards isn't quite good enough yet to where he can be the primary facilitator of your offense from the beginning of a shot clock. There are times, depending on the matchup, that he can do that, but I think against the Mavericks, we kind of saw the limitations of him, mainly due to their aggressive coverages, how they kind of overload the ball side, and just will, gap help you to death. So with Anthony Edwards, I tweeted about how I really wish the Timberwolves would run more weak side action for him, to kind of put him in a position where not necessarily an advantage is already created, but give him a clear structure to where, okay, we're getting you the ball in this position where, like, let's use like a stagger, for example. Have him come off at 2 pin downs on the weak side of the floor. Mike Conley, Gobert on the strong side, in an ideally empty corner. Anthony Edwards comes off these pin downs. We'll say, Cat or Naz Reid is the top screener. Anthony Edwards comes off the screen, gets the ball. He's got two options. He can either drive to the basket, which I think off the catch, Anthony Edwards driving to the basket, good. I'm okay with that because that first step is just ridiculous. Second option, he uses that screen and you get a nice pick and roll with whoever that top screener is. Or, there's all sorts of different variations of half court offense that you can run out of that. But my whole point is Anthony Edwards is not able to play random from the start of a possession. You need to put him into action that allows him to utilize what he does best to play random and create off of kind of already set up scenarios. Because I think really that's what half court offense is you're trying to put the defense into positions that you want them to be so that you can capitalize on how they're set up. Like you're just arranging chess pieces so you can go for the checkmate. Like that's what you're doing in like a very abstract macro level.
Yeah, I think they did a little bit of that in the back end of Game 4. They started running some horn sets. They had Kyle Anderson bring the ball up, let Anthony Edwards play off the ball. It reminds me, it's fresh off the top of my head because I'm rewatching the Bulls-Lakers finals from 1991, but it's like what they used to do for Jordan with Pippen bringing the ball up or who was the point guard at the time, like B.J. Armstrong or John Paxson, whoever's bringing the ball up. And then they'd have Jordan come off of little staggered screens and let him going downhill, give him like cross screens, give him post up mismatches, whatever. It's just like these. It's like think of it like you have these two molecules, right, and you have them in like the giant room. Like they're going to be going all over the place. It's uncontrollable. It's random, but it's uncontrollable randomness. Whereas like if you put them in like a jar and you kind of let them go random in the jar, like it's controlled randomness, it's tamed randomness, it's functional randomness, and I think that's kind of. Whereas like Luka, he can be the jar. He can be the jar. He can be the guy pulling the strings, controlling them. He just is more comfortable like that. Edwards at this point, he needs those quick hitters. He needs to be a little bit tamed. And so yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting kind of thought exercise where it's like what I liked about what you said is like obviously yes, random is better than order, right? But it's like there is a limitation to too much like randomness. In Prater's book, he even talks about the contrasting styles between like those late 2010 Golden State Warriors and the late 2010 Houston Rockets, where the Rockets are like the epitome of order with that spread pick and roll and the ISO ball, Harden, Paul, right? And then the Warriors is like free flowing Curry, Clay, eventually Kevin Durant. And so he kind of posits that the best offense is both. It's both. You combine the two. You combine the order, the spacing principles with the movement principles of the Warriors. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that probably puts a pin in that segment. I think we've pretty much covered.
Speaking of segments, do you have anything more you want to – do you want to memorialize your Minnesota Timberwolves before we look ahead?
Honorary Minnesota Timberwolves. Still a Thunder fan. I gotta clarify that. Some people get confused sometimes. I gotta make it clear where my allegiances lie. But yeah. Okay. Serious time. I think that the Timberwolves have a good enough team and they have enough data to where they can sit back and say, we're a very good team that needs some internal development. Some guys just need to have the natural progression of the offseason where like maybe some young guys start to figure it out a little bit. And it kind of changes the rotation up. We get some more pieces we can work with. We'll see what happens. That being said, if there were, we can maybe get into specific players to talk about here, but this is more memorialization, kind of macro level, zooming out. What does the future look like going forward for them? I think there is a world where if Tim Connolly gets some phone calls and they're like, hey, here's an offer that you can't refuse for insert player name here. I think there's a world where the Timberwolves are like, all right, it's a pretty good deal. I think that makes us pretty comfortably better as a team. My point here is that I think there is a world where by the trade deadline next year, I think there's a world where this Timberwolves team gets shaken up a little bit. But I don't think they need to shake things up yet. I think next year, another, deep playoff run, but you can't quite get over the hump. I think that's when you start seriously having some discussions about like, okay, let's move some guys if we need to, and maybe retool a little bit, not rebuild, but retool. But also, I don't think the Timberwolves need to be complacent with where they're at. I think they will be fine if they continue to develop internally. But if the right offers came across the table, wouldn't be surprised one bit if they're like, let's shake things up. Let's try something new.
Okay, so is Nickeil? I have to look at it. Is Nickeil Alexander-Walker a free agent this year? He's not.
I can pull up their salary cap table.
No, they have him. They have him. So he's actually a great deal next year, $4 million. That's awesome. So that means that all of their core 8 will be there under salary. Wait, Kyle
Anderson's a free agent, I believe.
Okay, that's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt big time, right? He had a good series. He had a nice series.
He did, and I think we saw. Chris Finch saw during the second round, he was like, this isn't a Kyle Anderson series. And he pulled the plug. So I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, I like Kyle. I'm not anti Kyle Anderson anymore. Okay. In the right matchup, I'm pro Kyle Anderson.
Two questions for you really quickly. One, so this internal development, I know you were like kind of bullish on Leonard Miller heading into the offseason. That's still like a thing, right?
A little bit of a meme, but yeah, I do think he's good.
Yeah, so that's like that could be a thing though next season. He could come in like we've seen before, like guys like Peyton Watson. He could be like a Peyton Watson type player for them. Like he didn't do anything in year 1. Now he's like kind of like a guy, right? That could. So do you think they could run it back with this core, and then you add like one minimum signing of consequence, and like still be a contender? So like Ant gets better, Conley gets maybe a little bit worse, Cat Gobert probably similar, Jaden might get better, Nickeil might get a little better, Leonard Miller might get a little better.
I think we'll see more of a trade-off next year. Like, I think this year the Timberwolves over-indexed on defense a little bit. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised next year if their defense isn't as good, but their offense is, they put more of a focal point on. Because that was Chris Finch's whole thing, was like he was like this offensive guru. And then now it's like Timberwolves are a defense first team. But I think they can still reach in an ideal world. Obviously matchups exist. Matchups reign supreme. I think they can still be this level of competitive in the West with this current core.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's funny you mentioned Chris Finch. I think he was the OC for the Denver Nuggets, kind of installed the offense. So it's funny we talk about them like that, like the Timberwolves this way and the Nuggets that way. But that's why it just goes to show it's all about personnel.
Yeah.
More so than coaching. But the other question is, what are the odds, if you had to go 0 to 100, that Naz Reid and Karl-Anthony Towns are both on the roster next season?
By the end of next season or by the start of next season?
Go by the end. Yeah, go by the end because the trade deadline, things could happen.
%50.
Okay.
Well, so I say that more for one guy than the other because here's my whole thing with Cat. Cat this year in the playoffs was good, but not, and I'm not talking about this year. He's making $36 million. He made $36 million this year. If he plays at this level next year with like similar results overall, you know, rough games, rough series here and there, et cetera, Karl Anthony Towns is making $49 million next year. My whole thing with Cat is this type of performance from Cat is fine if he's making like $25 million.
Yeah.
But this isn't going to work at a $50 million price tag, which is why I'm kind of like, if the right deal came across the table for the Timberwolves, then, you know, it's kind of not, this has nothing to do with Cat, but if you have the opportunity to move like a $50 million player for like two cheaper options that maybe fit overall a little bit better and are a little bit easier to work around, you know, you're just doing your job to take a deal like that. That's smart. That's just smart management. And it's not like he has a scaling contract. He's making $49 million next year, $53 million a year after that, $57 million the year after that. And he has a player option in 2027, 2028 for $61 million. Yeah. I'm
sure that'll age well.
Right. So, you know, no disrespect to Cat. I love the guy. I think he has done a good job of kind of changing a lot of the narrative stuff around him. I think people are disgusting about Cat, including that ridiculous article that was posted. I'm not even going to say who posted it or where it's from because I don't want it to get clicks. You know, all respect in the world to Cat, but the price tag is just, I can't get that. It leaves such a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened with that article. It was one of the publications I write for.
Oh crap! Do I need to cut that out?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't do too much work for them. Really, there's people from the publication itself tweeting about it. But yeah, it's weird situation there. Weird stuff. I
want to talk to you a little bit about that after the pod, but continue.
Okay, cool. I like that little post. How much should we charge people to hear our post pod conversations?
Yeah, we do spill some tea that like we could charge for. We're not going to. Yeah,
can I? This is like bad podcasting 101. My thinking here is that we're already at the hour mark. We haven't even previewed Dallas, Boston. I don't even think I'm ready. You want to do that early next week? Preview them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so you want me to spill some tea? I got this. So you've heard me say like Nembhard reminds me of Brunson a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually got somebody close to Jalen Brunson. He told me that both Jalen and Rick, his father, have always been very fond of Andrew Nembhard's game, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. Wouldn't you say?
I think so. Yeah. And Eric Weiss. Friend of the pod.
Oh yeah.
He replied to me and he was like, big thing for one of my tweets about Andrew Nembhard. He was like, big thing for Andrew Nembhard is going to be just putting on some muscle and being able to carry that weight around and use it. And I think that's like what kind of sets him and Nembhard apart from Brunson is like Brunson's just low center of gravity, stocky dude, can bully guys. And I think that's really like, I think Andrew Nembhard does a good job kind of using his weight right now, and I don't even think he's at like the best weight he could carry around.
He was moving Derek White a little bit.
Oh yeah, big time. He was bumping Jayson Tatum off the elbows. Yeah, I'm like,
that's true,
dude. You're like, let your nuts hang, man.
Yeah. So we're gonna hold off till next week, early next week on the series preview.
Let's do just a quick macro level just so we cover our base, because I think the thumbnail is going to be like Luka Doncic and Jayson Tatum next to each other. So I think if we don't talk about it a little bit, it's a little
this is good this is great podcasting. Okay, fine.
I still think, you know,
the thumbnail could be like, is the Wolves dynasty over? It could be, you know what I mean? Like we could do that. You could go that route. Think about that. Everybody's doing that. Listen, man.
Over before it started.
saying, man.
Ultimate clickbait.
Oh, nothing wrong. If you honestly, here's my thought on that. As long as the actual content itself is good, insightful, I don't care how hard you clickbait it. The truth, you could do the truth about, I don't know, about Aaron Nesmith, man, the real truth about Aaron Nesmith, and then just talk about how he's like a really nice role player, You've got
the right brain. You've got YouTube brain. I like it.
Thank you, man. So what were we talking about? Tatum, Doncic.
Celtics, Mavs.
Yeah. Okay, so my big initial thought is, I have a couple initial thoughts. First is obviously the Boston Celtics are extremely talented. They're top 6 if they're healthy. Best top 6 you can get. Best top 6 money can buy, right? They're going to be Dallas's biggest test yet. No matter what, Dallas likes to shrink the floor. So far, they've played a team where each of those teams plays at least one below average shooter positionally. The Celtics don't really have that. They have the best spacing in basketball. That is worrisome. But at the same time, the way the Dallas Mavericks shrink the floor, it leaves the guy on the weak side corner open. And to find the guy in the weak side corner in the most efficient way, you need to hit that skip pass we've talked plenty about. That is the hardest pass in basketball. Only the best of the best can consistently hit that. Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Darius Garland, people of that nature. Sorry, my dog's being a menace right now. But
I can't even hear it, so you're good.
And so the Celtics don't have an elite passer. They have a lot of really good passers, but they don't have any elite ones. So I'm interested to see that battle between Dallas's strong side overload, Boston's passing in that way. I know Boston moves the ball well, but that's something I'm interested for. Like, who's going to win out? Will Boston's spacing ultimately prevail, or will Dallas be able to weaponize Boston's lack of elite passing?
Yeah, that's really I think that's, you kind of just previewed the question that should be on everyone's mind. I also think you kind of look at the Timberwolves series, and the Mavericks did a really, really good job of shutting down the rim, protecting the paint, preventing guys from getting to the paint in the first place. And I think that works really well for the Timberwolves. And it worked really well against the Thunder. The Thunder were the best driving team in the NBA. And if you watch that Mavericks series, you're like, this was the best driving team in the NBA? Are you kidding me? Well, what are we doing here? Paint. Yeah. But what's weird is you look at the Celtics, and the Celtics are like, the paint? Who cares about the paint? We're shooting threes. What are you talking about? We don't work in the paint. And even with Kristaps Porzingis, they have their empty side pick and rolls that they run with Derek White and KP. And they'll generate lobs out of that and stuff. And that's fine. But even when they're feeding Porzingis in the post, he's shooting mid-range shots. He likes those little one dribble nail jumpers and baseline fadeaways. That's he's not really outside of spread pick and rolls. He's a outside the paint kind of oriented big. He's a jump shooting big. And so I just wonder how Dallas operates with that, because let's look at their matchups so far in the playoffs. Clippers, Kawhi's definitely more of a, all around scorer. Paul George still definitely more of a perimeter kind of oriented guy, can still drive and finish, et cetera, et cetera. The second round, they had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who actually kind of neutralized the impact that Dallas's paint packing had with just tough shot making, mid-range shot making. There was only so much Dallas could really even do with that. Mavericks still won in 6 games, yes. Then you get to the Timberwolves series. It's Anthony Edwards can do some mid-range creation, but overall as a primary offensive scorer, he's still got some development to be able to put the whole package together. And then you get to a potential Celtics series, and you kind of look at them and you're like, well, they've got, the mid-range scoring of Jaylen Brown, who, credit to Jaylen Brown, he's been spectacular. He has been very, 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 very good. They've kind of got that mid-range punch that they can throw, where it's like there's only so much you can do with that. They've got Porzingis, who perimeter-oriented kind of delay action hub, but can also create in the mid-range for himself. He can operate as a screener and roller. Well, that's a little bit more unique than anything Dallas has had to face so far. You know, that really hasn't existed, that element of like, how is Derek Lively, and I'm not saying he can't, I'm just asking questions. How is Derek Lively going to handle dealing with a Porzingis and the results of Boston's offense around that? If Porzingis is back, I think it's been said he'll be back for the finals. I'm not entirely sure.
It was looking like they were saying he would be able to come back, like, I think second half of this series, to be honest, the Pacers series. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he'll be back. I mean, it's been over a month now.
Yeah. So I'm kind of just like, I think the Celtics, the ball's in their court is what I'm saying. I think this is a matchup where we're going to see what Dallas is capable of, and I think we're going to see what Boston's capable of. Because people are kind of overlooking, like, Boston hasn't just, the playoffs look easy for Boston right now, but they've been doing this for 82 games. This is an insanely good basketball team. Do not forget that. And Dallas, since the trade deadline, has been an insanely good basketball team. And we're going to see two insanely good basketball teams throw their best punches at each other. And, man, I can't wait. I think it's going to be an incredible finals.
Yeah. So a couple things. It is going to be an incredible finals. Like, so the thing is, like, one thing here that Dallas has in their favor, if they can keep these games close, you have Luka and Kyrie. You have the closer advantage, right? You have the Boston Celtics, notoriously fascinating late game offense, and then you have Luka, Doncic, Kyrie, Irving, notoriously cold-blooded killers. Hannibal Lecter want to rip your heart out, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Kristaps thing's interesting because, like, a big, like, if you look at, like, so many of Ant's missed shots around the rim, it's like Gafford, Lively completely just disregarding Gobert and, like, just waiting for him in the paint, right? Whereas, like, now you got Kristaps Porzingis, who's probably got, like, the quickest trigger of any three-point shooting big man in the NBA. Like, he's, like, ready to sling that ball. So sagging off him will be interesting. But also, like, if they time their help up well enough, because I know Tatum, Brown struggle against late help. They're not as good as, like, some of the elite kick-out passers at that. So that could be something to look at. One thing I've heard brought up that's helps Dallas here is Boston's guys are all, like, power punchers, like Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jayson Tatum, Brown. They all use their strength to get to the rim and just to, you know, create shots right off the dribble. So that plays for Dallas in terms of, like, Doncic is a big dude, PJ is a big dude, Derek Jones Jr. is strong. It'll allow them to play Kleber. They can play more like Kleber plus a center lineups because it's not like Boston's going to be blitzing past them anyways with speed. So that's another notch, another bow in their quiver. I still haven't watched the one meaningful game that they played each other in this regular season. I want to watch that. I want to dig into some film. I want to sit with my thoughts for a little while. My intuition's telling me this Boston Celtics team's a juggernaut and that they'll probably win this series in 5 or 6 games. But this Dallas team keeps proving me wrong. I've picked Dallas to lose every series. Like, in my mind, every one of these series I've picked Dallas to lose. So you're right. It's going to be a very, very fascinating series. It was funny what you said. Like, you're like, Dallas is going to show us what they're made of. Boston's going to show us what they're made of. I'm like, yeah, it's great analysis, Alex. You know, that's never happened before in a playoff series.
Right. No, I realized that was completely unnecessary. One thing I will say, as amazing as Luka has been, I don't think we've seen, like, an elite Luka playoff series yet. I think if you kind of look at how he's performed throughout the playoffs so far, it's not as good as we're kind of used to. Clippers series, 30 points per game, great. Shot 40% from the field, 24% from three. You know, you got the playmaking, et cetera, which will always give Luka tons and tons of value. OKC series, 24.7 points per game. This was probably his best series of the playoffs so far in terms of just scoring efficiency. 45% from the field, 39% from three. Timberwolves series, 32 points per game, 47% from the field, 43% from three. So I think this series we saw Luka kind of come into form and just be like the Luka that we know. So now I'm like, okay, does the Timberwolves Luka carry over into this final series, or will it be more of OKC Clippers Luka? I'm more inclined to think it's probably the Timberwolves version of Luka because it's kind of positive regression to the mean for him, just based on what we've seen from him in the playoffs. Excuse me. So I don't know, just something I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, he's only at for the whole playoffs 56% true shooting, which is right around playoff league average. So you'd have to think that'll go up a little bit, especially. Right. The other thing is the Celtics play a lot of drop coverage. They do a lot of switching, which is like, you know, Luka eats that kind of stuff for dinner. I don't know how many times they're going to try to switch Horford onto Luka and how many step backs he's going to hit over him before they realize it's a no-no. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun series. Again, I don't know how many more chances we'll have to talk about it before the first game, which is Thursday, 8:30. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Guys, if you have been listening this long, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Really does help us out a ton. Leave a 5-star rating if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you're listening on. Leave a 5-star rating. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll answer them at the beginning of next episode. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at AlexHoops_, at Mat Issa 15, MATISSA15. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, whatever the case may be. And yeah, we'll see you for the finals.